Thank you guys very much for showing up. My name is Dan Siroker. Thank you for that introduction. And I have to start with an apology. I know you guys are here to see lessons learned from 100,000 A/B and multivariate tests. And I'm sorry, unfortunately, I'm actually going to be presenting lessons learned from 177,295 A/B and multivariate tests, which is the total number of experiments that have run through Optimizely as of last night. And what I've done is actually handpicked out the ones that I thought were most relevant for this audience, for you guys to take home today, some key lessons that you can go back to do and apply at your business. I'm not going to teach you the things that we did back in the Obama campaign. I'm going to show you some examples, but my hope is that the things that I share with you are broadly applicable and not particular to a campaign. I doubt many of you will likely run for office. So I want to start off, tell you a little bit about myself. Here's my background. I was a product manager at Google, and in November of 2007, I snuck in to see Barack Obama speak when he came to Google, and he gave a talk about how he wanted to take what we're doing at Google with evidence and science and feedback and data and bring that to the government. I remember the last thing he said was, "I want you to be involved," and I took him literally. I hopped on a plane. 2 weeks later, I flew to Chicago and I joined the campaign as a volunteer. And eventually that turned into a job as the director of analytics. In that experience is really where I saw firsthand the value of A/B testing, and the original inspiration for starting Optimizely came out of the pain points we faced back then. And Optimizely is a product I wish we had in 2008 to make it easy for anybody to do A/B testing. So I want to start off by, some folks usually ask me, well, why would you leave such a great job at Google to go to the Obama campaign? So I actually want to start off by showing you a couple clips from what Barack Obama said when he came to Google that I think is very appropriate for this audience, and we'll set the stage for what I'm about to share with you.
What is the most efficient way to sort 1,032,bit integers?
Well,
I'm sorry, maybe
no.
that's not
I think the bubble sort would be the wrong way to go. I am a big believer in reason and facts and evidence and science and feedback. Everything that allows you to do what you do, that's what we should be doing in our government. I want people in technology. I want innovators and engineers and scientists like yourselves. I want you helping us make policy based on facts, based on reason. And I think that many of you can help me, so I want you to be involved. Thank you so much, everybody.
Well, he had me at bubble sort, but I flew out to Chicago, and this is what our team looked like. This was the new media analytics team in the 2008 Obama campaign. They called us new media because that was the phrase they used to describe everything they didn't really understand. So everything that wasn't TV or radio fit under this neat bucket of new media, including things like email and SMS and Twitter and this newfangled thing like Facebook. And so our job and our mission was to try to figure out how to use the data we had within the campaign to help make better decisions. So I'm going to share with you some of the things we did and the approaches we took that I think apply very well to what you do. Here's another picture of our broader new media team. This is me here with my back to the TV. Everyone here is watching. This is me. Everyone here is watching the Democratic National Convention speech when Bill Clinton was giving his keynote back in 2008. I'm busy setting up an A/B test on the Obama splash page, comparing a picture of Barack Obama to Bill Clinton. Wasn't statistically significant, but this is a great picture of the broader team. One thing I please ask you to do is ignore all the Bud Lights in this photo. And so what are some of the lessons learned? So I'm going to share with you the lessons we learned from the 2008 campaign, as well as now having worked over 3,500 customers at Optimizely, the things that we've seen work well that maybe help give you some of the things that you can do day in, day out. I know some of you are probably doing A/B testing today. Many of you might not be. So I hope to leave you inspired to start testing today. So the first lesson, and probably the most important, is to define success. And for us, this is what that meant. But really, by define success, what I mean is to define quantifiable success metrics. And the reason why this is so important is that a very common mistake people make when they start A/B testing is that they start moving a bunch of levers around without understanding the final goal that they're trying to optimize for. And it might seem like it's improving the conversion rate on your homepage, but it turns out it actually hurts your overall conversion rate from homepage to thank you page. And one of the great things about defining quantifiable success metrics is that it allows you to understand where your bottlenecks are. And so let me show you an example. Here are some four tools that allow you to do this. Google Analytics is a great free tool. Many of you probably use it today. There are two startups I'd recommend, Mixpanel and Kissmetrics. Both allow you to really understand the audience who come to your website, understand how to define quantifiable success metrics, and then understand where your bottlenecks are. And then there's an enterprise solution called Omniture Site Catalyst, which you're welcome to try. Here is Google Analytics visitors flow. My hope is that this is one tool you use to understand where people drop off across the entire site of yours. Here's a better view of that. This is Mixpanel. Mixpanel lets you see step by step where people are dropping off. And the reason why this is so helpful is once you've defined some quantifiable success metrics, in this case, this funnel is showing you the number of people who view your homepage, then view the sign up page, then sign up, and then purchase, you can understand where you should optimize and where you should start. So this is where when I joined the campaign in December of 2008, this is what I saw. This is actually December 2007, early 2008. I came to the campaign, I looked at our Google Analytics report, and saw this. We had a ton of people coming to our website organically. We're doing a great job of, from SEM perspective, paying for people to come to the site. Relatively few of those people actually signed up on our email list, but the folks that did, we were really effective at raising money from them and getting them to volunteer and getting them hopefully out to vote and bring out other people to vote. So the real bottleneck for us, the real opportunity right off the bat, was to run an experiment or an A/B test to improve this bottleneck, the email sign-up step. So many of you might not know what an A/B test is. So in fact, we're going to do a live multivariate test, which is just two A/B tests running at the same time, or multiple A/B tests, in this room. So we have enough data points here to be statistically significant, so we'll see how this turns out. But first, let me show you what an A/B test is visually. So here, this is the page we're going to test. This is the BarackObama.com splash page in December of 2007. At the top, you have the media section, where we tried three different images and 3 different videos. The bottom right here, you have the button, where we tried 4 different buttons. And I'm going to show you all the combinations, and I want you to vote for the button that you think had the highest sign-up rate and the media that you think had the highest sign-up rate. Now, understand the success metric was the percentage of people who fill out this form when they come to the page. Here's a visualization of what happened. This is an A/B test. People come to your website, they get split into multiple variations over the same period of time, and then we measure the impact on all the metrics we care about. Donations, whether they sign up to volunteer, whether they're actually signing up on the splash page. So very visually, you'll see everything's controlled except for the changes that you're about to see. Here's the list, and I'm going to go through each one. Keep track of the button you want, and we'll do a vote, and then keep track of the media you think did the best, and we'll do a vote. So first, the buttons. This is the sign up button right over here. Learn more button. Join us now button. And the sign up now button. So pick one of those 4. How many people think the sign up button performed best? Okay, about 6 or 7. The learn more button. About 20. Join us now. 100 or 200, that's a lot of people. 80% of the group, join us now, and then sign up now. Okay, about 5. So in this group, in this test, join us now performed the best. I'm not going to tell you what actually worked, but we'll just remember that. Join us now is what you guys picked. Next, the media section. 3 images, 3 videos. Pick one of the 6 you think performed the best. First, the media. This is the get involved image, the family image, the change image. Next is Barack's video.
Hi, I'm Barack Obama. Welcome to BarackObama.com, the official website of my campaign for president. Here you can sign up for invitations to campaign events and learn more about our movement for change.
Springfield video.
It's been a long time since I wanted to hear what a politician had to say.
You came here because you believe in what this country can be.
And last is Sam's video.
Now, even as we speak, there are those who are preparing to divide us. The spin masters, the negative ad peddlers, who embrace the politics of anything goes. Well, I say to them tonight, there is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America. The pundits like to slice and dice our country into red states and blue states. Red states for Republicans, blue states for Democrats. But I've got news for them too. We worship an awesome God in the blue states, and we don't like federal agents poking around in our libraries in the red states.
All right, pick one of those 6. How many people think the get involved image performed best? 1. Family image. 5. Change image. Maybe 30, 40. Brock's video. 6. Springfield video. 20. And Sam's video. All right, the majority. So in this group, Join Us Now performed the best, and Sam's video performed the best. Here are the actual winners. Learn More. How many people picked Learn More? Okay, a few more than last time. And how many people picked the family image? Great. Did anyone get them both right and hadn't seen this before? All right, no one. So this was eye-opening for us, because within the campaign, as was in the case in this group, everyone loved Sam's video. In fact, we thought we should just run this test to see how much better it does than our original image. And we thought, well, we'll just throw in some other pictures in there as well, because we want to test out this whole testing thing. We were shocked to find out that, and I'll show you the results here, we were shocked to find out that not only did Sam's video perform worse, but all of the videos performed worse than all of the images. And in hindsight, that makes sense. You don't want to watch a video that autoplays on a page if you're coming from work, you hit the back button. Or worse, maybe it is such a captivating and interesting video that now you see the skip to homepage button at the bottom. Either way, the why behind the data is difficult to answer with A/B testing. But what we do know is that from the sample of this case, 50,000 people who saw each of these different medias over this period of time, that the image that worked best was the family image. It increased the sign-up rate from 8.5 to 9.7, which is a lift of 13%. And when it comes to the buttons, the Learn More button did very, very well. The Learn More button increased the sign-up rate on average from 7.5% to 8.9. That was an improvement of roughly 19%. What's interesting, if you now combine, question?
Yeah, what about combinations in the sense,
The question is, what about the combinations? And I'm glad you asked. If you combine them and you put them all together, combination 11 is the Learn More button with the family image. And in this case, we saw that there was a lift from, on average, 8.3% to 11.6%, which is an improvement in this case, an observed improvement of 40.6. So, big deal, 40.6% on the first page you see when you go to BarackObama.com. Well, what we did is we looked at a holdout test. We ran this in December of 2007 before the Iowa caucuses. And we tried to understand the length for roughly the next year, what the value of this lift, about 40% lift, was on the splash page. And here's what we found. 40.6% translated into another 2.8, 2.9 million people who signed up on this page. Roughly 10% of those ended up volunteering, so another 288,000 volunteers. And what I think is probably most impressive and maybe most relevant to this group is a dramatic lift in the amount of money we're able to raise. So we saw a lift of $57 million in incremental revenue from the people who actually signed up on this page through this experiment. So it really shows you the value of defining quantifiable success metrics. Not only by defining those quantifiable success metrics, you'll know whether the changes you're making are actually having an improvement, but you'll be able to understand the bottlenecks and where you should focus your energy when it comes to A/B testing. Lesson 2, explore before you refine. And here I'm going to show you some examples of Optimizely customers that really embody this. Here's a definition of what I mean by explore before you refine. A common temptation people have when they first start A/B testing is to make a subtle change and just see how it goes. The downside of that is the more subtle the change, the less likely the outcome. And if you want to approach A/B testing as an attempt to get to the optimal solution, sort of the global maximum versus the local maximum, the right way to approach that is to explore the whole solution space here on the right, try all the different things, different layouts, different dramatically new ideas, assume your current site is not that great already, is try dramatically new things, And then once you see what works, refine from there. Avoid the temptation to assume that your current site's already dang good and refine that. Because what's going to happen is you're going to miss the best solution by just constantly refining from where you start. Here's some great examples. This is a great Optimizely customer, Disney, and in particular ABC Family. On the ABC Family videos page, they have on their site, they used to at least, have this promotion that says, all new, The Lion Game, tonight 9/8 Central. This is something you might see during a show you watch on TV. It's okay, it's a promotion for another show. Traditional media maybe makes sense to put it on new media. Well, here's what they thought. Well, look at our search logs. They have the search bar in the upper right. And they're shocked to see how many people were actually searching for the entire names of episodes or entire names of shows. And what they had was this hypothesis that people were actually looking to catch up on shows they missed, not to find some new cool show they hadn't thought of before. And so the metric they measured here was engagement, the percentage of people who just interacted or clicked on any part of the experiment page. When they ran this experiment, their goal was a 20% lift. They were shocked to see a 600% lift by actually changing the page dramatically from what they started with. And they explored the solution space and then since refined. And I'll show you in a later example another refinement they made. Here's an example from Crate & Barrel. So Crate & Barrel is a great customer of ours. They run a lot of A/B tests. And the way they start is actually through usability testing. They'll do usability testing both in-house and through third-party services. And they'll try to understand where people are actually missing and failing. In this case, this is a navigation and usability test, and they found that the bottom sort of design had a better usability. They have so many different products and furniture and products that they offer that they want a better usability. So what they did is they used usability as a way to infer what are things they should test. Here's another example. They wanted to in this case, reduce the amount of navigation when you get to a product page. They increased the navigation on the home page, now on the product page. They wanted to be able to actually showcase the name, the reviews, the images more prominently. So below, they saw the better usability tests come from that design. And now here's what they did. So then that was sort of the exploration step. Now they've explored some designs, and they actually now start testing. And so what they did is during this exploration, they tested an entirely new site redesign that was inspired from these usability tests. They tested the things that they thought would work, some of which worked and some of which didn't. In this case, the experiments actually resulted in a 2% lift in average order value and revenue per visitor. They saw more site searches, which they thought was good. But unfortunately, fewer people added products to their cart. And so the beauty of this is they did this exploration step. Now the refinement step is to try to improve that last part. Okay, we had fewer people, fewer products were added to the cart, maybe because they're getting to the thing they want. They don't buy other things that they didn't come there necessarily for. And so here's the refinement step. So here, they actually ran an experiment. They saw, hey, we're getting fewer people to buy stuff, fewer things added to their cart. So they added a sale, the top nav here, this new nav, they added a little sale menu, made that more prominent, because before that was more prominent, they just hit it. And now they have more conversions because they're able to actually more prominently show their sale items. Here's another refinement. In this case, this is an experiment they're currently running. So if you go to Crate & Barrel, you'll be part of an experiment. They're running an experiment about what's the most prominent amount of text you want to show on a product page. So they're actually doing a collapse by default or showing either overview, details, returns, and exchange. And this came again from usability tests. They would ask customers, or at least they would even hear solicited from their customer support team. People keep asking, well, why don't you put the dimensions of the product on your website? And we're like, of course we do. It's right there, but no one sees it. And so they're actually testing how to use that real estate best to maximize the value per visitor. So lesson 2, explore before you refine. Great example from ABC and from Crate & Barrel. Lesson 3, less is more. Reduce choices. Here's an example of a startup. This is C-Click-Fix. They're a startup out in the Northeast that helps people report neighborhood issues and then see them get fixed. They actually devoted quite a bit of time building this great new interactive map that jumped around the area whenever somebody would report an issue here at the top. And again, this is one of those things they want to see how brilliant that was. And they tested against this very simple landing page that just says, report neighborhood issues and see them get fixed. Less is more. 8% lift by just showing a call to action explanation of what you do. Here's AVG Australia and other Australian companies. They did a refinement here, and the refinement they did was they looked at Amazon's checkout funnel. They said, hey, it's interesting. Amazon doesn't show these links here at the top when you're near the end of the checkout funnel. You're basically trapped on that page. And so they removed the for home, for business, company, and support links from the checkout page, the very last step of the process. That shocked to see that increased dollars per visitor by almost 17%. So clearly, less is more. Give them, if you want somebody to do something, get rid of all the choices that you don't want them to do, and they're likely to do the thing you want. Here's a great crate and barrel example. So they saw, by redesigning their cart page and making not only the thing that's in your cart more prominent, but the information that they care about more prominent, they're able to increase average order value by 2% and revenue per visitor by 1%. It may not seem like a lot, but if you think about Crate and Barrel as a company, that's actually quite an improvement. They took that same lesson, and actually another Crate and Barrel property is CB2. The CB2 team, they loved this, in the checkout funnel, they loved this navigation here on the left. And the optimization team said, hey, we learned this thing on Crate and Barrel. You might want to consider it for CB2. And they said, oh, there's no way that'll actually help. You guys have like a 1 or 2% lift. So they ran this experiment, and they were shocked to find a 15% lift in conversion rate by just removing all those links on the left, and a 10% lift in revenue per visitor. So lesson 3, less is more, reduce choices. Lesson 4, words matter, focus on your call to action. We're going to do one last experiment in this room, and I'll do another Obama experiment. This is much simpler. This is a simple A/B test. We try these 5 buttons. And the metric, the success metric that we cared about, the quantifiable success metric, was dollars per page view, the average amount of money we were able to subsequently raise from somebody once they saw one of these 5 buttons. And this button was prominently shown in the upper right-hand corner of the entire site. And then we measured the impact once somebody saw that button. So here they are. I'm not going to go through them. Pick one of these 5 you think had the highest dollars per page view, subsequent dollars per page view. So how many people think Donate Now performed the best? About 10. Please donate. 6. Why donate? 20, 30. Donate and get a gift. 15. And contribute. All right, everyone else. Well, I hate to do this, but you're all wrong. It really mattered what we knew about you as an individual, and that made a big difference in terms of which button was the most effective at getting you to actually donate. If you had never signed up on our email list and never donated, the best button to show you was donate and get a gift. And we took into account the fulfillment cost of the free car magnet or t-shirt. This is the lift in dollars per page view. If you'd sign up on our email list but never donated, it turns out Please Donate did the best by a pretty significant margin. And what's interesting is if you'd previously donated, one thing we knew for sure is that you saw the control. We knew that you saw Donate Now before. And so just by changing that, by changing it from Donate Now to any of the other variations we tried, we had over 10% lift in dollars per page view. And so it just shows you the value of making a change, let alone changing it for somebody who's seen it before. So this was really eye-opening to us as well. It really helped us understand the value of segmenting your audience. Unfortunately, back then, this is about as much data we knew about somebody, because you cookied somebody when they sign up on our email or when they donated. But it's really illuminating that words matter. Focus on your call to action.
What's the name of that last one?
Words matter. Focus on your call to action. The question is, what's the name of the lesson? So here's another good example. And this is one that, in my attempt to share these lessons learned, it's very difficult to come up with a generalizable statement that you can't find a counterexample to. So I'm sure there are plenty of counterexamples, but here's one I'm going to make. I'm going to make a generalizable statement that's not one of these official lessons, which is, if you want somebody to do something, tell them to do it. Here, this company, they used to say free trial on their big call to action. Many of you probably have this on your homepage. And they just tried changing those 2 words to 3 words. Try it free. They told people what they wanted them to do. Increase the click-through rate by 15%, increase the sign-up rate by 15%, and they got more accounts. That's great. But the lesson isn't universally true, and that's why I'm saying it's not universally true, because here's a counterexample. One of the things you might suppose, and maybe something worth testing, is if you want somebody to do something, tell them to do it. In this case, ABC Family again, as I mentioned before, they did this exploration step where they looked at all the different things they could try, and now they're refining. In this refinement step, what they did was they took up the call to action in the bottom left-hand corner where they have this carousel of different things you can watch, and it used to say full episodes. They changed it to say watch episodes. Pretty simple, innocuous change. Full episodes actually had a higher click-through rate. And then again, this goes back to the hypothesis that they had, that people are actually full episodes. They want to actually catch up on the entire episode they missed before. And so even that had a pretty subtle change had a big impact.
Question.
Yes, sir, in the front.
Did they try watch full
The question is, did they try watch full episodes? They did not, and this is one of those things, you ask a great question because people sometimes think you run an A/B test and you're going to get more answers than questions. But the truth is you'll run one test and you'll end up with 10 more questions than you had answers out of it. You're like, wow, if that worked, then maybe this will work. And so you build this sort of culture of testing within your organization. By one test will lead to many more that you can go and chase. Yes, Alex.
I was thinking for the change in the text, a lot of people like to be told what to do,
Yeah.
respond to that, but they also want to know the results of the test.
Yeah.
Just saying full episode, that doesn't see what they get. If they know exactly what episode they're going to see or something like that, maybe they respond better than that.
Yeah.
But they know exactly what the feedback would be from the response.
Right.
Just like sign up for an account.
Yeah, the point is that people sometimes want to be told what to do, but they also want to know what they're going to expect after they do what they're told to do. And so that may be an underlying psychology or the hypothesis around full episodes versus watch episodes. Here's one of the examples that really hits home to me. This is one of the first Optimizely customers we had. This was the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund. And they're fortunate enough to get, after the earthquake in Haiti, they're fortunate enough to get a ton of outpouring of support. Millions and millions of people, frankly, I think tens of millions over a period of 1 or 2 days, came to their website to try to show support for the victims after the earthquake in Haiti. And they had one IT guy who cobbled together this donation form and needed help optimizing it. So I have a bunch more examples of experiments they ran, but I want to show you just one. They ran a bunch. This one experiment they ran, all they changed, if you can tell, the only thing they changed in this particular A/B test was they took the word submit and they changed it to support Haiti. That one change, 1 word to 2 words, resulted in almost 16% lift in dollars per visitor. It increased the average donation amount and increased the conversion rate on this form. And so a subtle change like that, you can imagine you're at work and you're halfway done with the form and your boss asks for something and you're like, well, support Haiti, yeah, I want to do that. I'm not going to abandon this form. There's lots of reasons behind it. The data is not going to tell you why, but it clearly shows that words matter. Here's a good crate and barrel example. It gets back to actually the point made earlier around telling somebody to do something. Here's an example where they used to have a choose items option for things like dinnerware, where you have a bunch of different things that fit into one set. They were really surprised. They ran this experiment. They thought they were really clever. It came up with all these combinations: choose items, add items below, choose items below, add to cart below. And actually, all of them improved the add to cart rate, which is interesting because it's one of those. This doesn't always happen. In fact, one of the lessons I'll tell you, sort of sometimes the downsides of some experiments. But in this case, by just changing these 2 words to a couple different words, in this case making it bigger probably helped as well, they clearly could see that the words had a big impact. So lesson 4, words matter, focus on your call to action. Lesson 5, fail fast. And I alluded to this just a second ago. One of the common things people anticipate when they run an A/B test, because they'll hear people like me talk about all these great, amazing, counterintuitive results, is that they're always going to get amazing, great, counterintuitive results. Sometimes you'll run an A/B test, and the thing you're trying to improve, the thing that's important to you, the quantifiable success metric that you're optimizing, goes down, and goes down really, really badly. And the lesson here is that if that happens, first of all, you'll get statistical significance soon, hopefully, if you have enough traffic. Pause that variation and try to learn something from it. In this case, I'll show you a couple examples. I hate to do this to throw some customers under the bus, but here's IGN, and they're gracious enough to let me share this. What they wanted to do, in this case, this is the top nav of the IGN homepage. They're a gaming site. You get a ton of traffic from people interested in gaming. And they make a lot of money by showing videos and showing video ads. And so what they wanted to do was they wanted to take this videos link here at the top and move it over to the left. And these decisions to do that, typically in most organizations, get made using a method known as the Hippo Syndrome, the highest paid person's opinion. And in the past, this is maybe how IGN might have actually made this decision. Hey, we got a lot of video ad revenue, make that more prominent, throw that over to the left. And so they ran an experiment, because they're a good data-driven company. They said, let's just run an experiment, see how it goes. 92.3 drop in click-through rate on the videos link. And what was interesting for this is that obviously this was a bad result. They quickly paused the variation and went back to the original page. But what they learned is that they have a very interesting audience. They have a ton of people who come to their site every single day, returning traffic, who expect a certain thing, expect a certain design. They expect that videos link to be there, and if it's not there, dang it, they're gonna leave. They're not gonna go find where it went. And so by segmenting their audience, returning versus new, they were able to learn that it's important to not necessarily optimize for the new user, but also the returning user who comes back to their site. Here's another great example, very counterintuitive. Thank you to Crate and Barrel for showing this. This is the espresso makers category page on Crate and Barrel. And unfortunately, they went through a big engineering effort to include reviews of every product on every page they show up. And they actually include here, you'll see they have reviews for these machines, because these are older, they have these. The new machine doesn't have reviews. And Amazon has taught the world that reviews are great. Everyone wants reviews, right? So they ran this experiment. How helpful was it to have all these engineers do all this work to show this on every page? 10% fewer conversions by showing reviews on the category page. And after they did this experiment, they thought about it and thought that probably the reason why was because some products don't have reviews, others do, and the ones that don't now seem unappealing. And so you actually end up having people choose the things that have reviews. All the new items, which are actually the things they want to sell, don't have reviews. And just by hiding it, you're going to have people go in and explore more. Here's another example from Crate and Barrel. I hate to harp on espresso, but it's a good example. The product itself doesn't matter. What they did here is one of their core tenets, they thought, hey, people, every time we've exposed more information to people earlier in the checkout process, the more likely they'll end up converting by the end. We want to be transparent, share that information. People want to know that. We don't want any surprises, and then they give up. So in that effort, they said, well, hey, let's just add the tax before they even tell us where they're at. Just sort of before you get to the checkout, just add in tax, and certainly that should help. When you include the tax, that'll help people know what they're buying and improve the conversion rate. Turns out they get fewer conversions by doing that. Actually showing that at the last step, they actually get more people to actually buy the products. And this is counterintuitive because their sort of core tenet was to show this information sooner. But the value of A/B testing is something that now would have been a detriment to their success and hurt these metrics they cared about, turn into a valuable learning opportunity. So lesson 5, fail fast. And the last lesson I want to share with you today is to try to inspire you to start today. And there are a bunch of ways you can do that. We had actually, in the Obama campaign in 2008, extensively used Google Website Optimizer, which is a free product from Google, and Omniture Test and Target. Unfortunately, Google Website Optimizer is not available as a standalone product, but they do have some functionality of that product available in Google Analytics. It's called Google Analytics Content Experiments, and if you're looking for a free way to do A/B testing, I'd encourage you to try it out. And based off of the experience using both Google Website Optimizer and Omniture Test and Target, and the fact that both then and now through content experiments require a developer to be part of the process, we said, why don't we start a company to try and make it easy for anybody to do A/B testing? Enable mere marketing mortals to do A/B testing, drive the entire process, and not have to depend on engineering every step of the way. And so that's why we started Optimizely. And I want to take a brief moment just to do a quick demo and give Atlassian some free website optimization advice. And so I'm going to actually use their site here. Let me go back to... So the process of actually getting started with Optimizely is pretty simple. All it takes to get started creating an experiment in Optimizely is to take the page you want to test, in this case Atlassian.com, and entering it into our homepage and clicking Test It Out. When you do this, this will actually load this page into context of our visual editor. And so you come to this page, and now you have controls at the top of the page to manage your experiment. I know it's a bit tough to see also describe. You have controls to manage your experiment. You can switch quickly between the variations that you're testing. You can set up your goals and start your experiment, undo, redo, everything you'd expect like a Google Doc. The real action happens below. You can actually move your mouse over different parts of the page, and this blue rectangle pops up that says, hey, that's part of the page you can test. So you don't need to know HTML or JavaScript or CSS. You can just point and click on the parts of the page you want to test. So an Atlassian marketer who might be in this room will get some free advice. You might want to take this, check out our products call to action with an arrow, click on it, and you get a bunch of options. Edit element, insert, et cetera. We're going to say edit text. And instead of saying check out our products, check out awesomest products, exclamation mark. I won't send you an invoice, don't worry. And so this is a good example of a quick text change. You take your existing site. It is a little bit of refinement, but it's focusing on the words. So that's definitely a great place to start. Focus on your call to actions, the buttons you want people to click. And from here, you run a simple test. Now, the great thing about Optimizely is not only was that easy from a visual interface perspective, but in order to implement this, all you need to do is a one-time copy and paste of a single line of code. Once this code is on your site, You never have to change it. So it enables you, the marketer, to create as many experiments as you like, run as many variations as you like, control all of the traffic through the tool, and never have to go back to your site. So doing that is truly, it makes the difference between doing A/B testing and not doing A/B testing. I'll show a couple more examples, and then I'll show you the results page and help you understand how to digest that. So here's another variation. I'm going to create variation 2. Variation 2, I'm going to do some funky things here. I'm actually going to take, let's say, let's do this. I see this. Oh, this is great. There's a Git for Business Teams call to action, which is a little subtle. I didn't quite see that when I first got there. And I might want to make that a bit more prominent. So I'm going to click on it, say Edit Element, Change Image. And for fun, I usually just have these things lying around. I happen to have a banner on my desktop. And what I've been able to do now is I took this image from my desktop, automatically through Optimizely, we upload it to Akamai on your behalf. We don't charge you for that. It's just an image that you now have on Akamai. And you have a whole new variation of this particular page with this red button. And what's great is you can actually click on this and say, track clicks, create new click goal. So you can track from clicks onto this button to the next step of your funnel, all the way through to the final checkout page on your site, the impact these changes have. The great thing also about the implementation is that once it's on your site, every page that it's on is automatically tracked as a page view goal. And I'll create one more variation. In this case, it'll be a little bit more crazy. What I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to take, let's say, this check out our products button and say move and resize. In fact, I'll take this larger group around it. Select a container here, move and resize. And I'm actually going to move this up to the top of the page. And so what's great about that is you can actually point and click on different parts of the page. And even though you don't understand the HTML and we don't actually integrate with your CMS, you can now, as you resize and change the page around, everything just works as you'd expect. So what we've tried to do from a design philosophy is to make Optimizely really, really easy to use. In the simple interface I just showed you, there's a lot of sophistication underneath the hood to work for just any website. And I encourage you to try it. It's free. What I just did right here, you don't have to actually create an account or talk to a salesperson. Everything I just showed you, you can do right now for your website. So I don't want to talk too much about our product. I mentioned we have a bunch of analytics integrations. In fact, the 4 tools I mentioned earlier, we have direct integrations with Google Analytics, Kissmetrics, Mixpanel, Site Catalyst. But what I want to end with in terms of a demo is actually show you how we eat our own dog food at Optimizely. We've had, roughly, I showed you before, around 177,000 experiments run through Optimizely. We were lucky enough that around our 100,000th experiment, we actually were able to run Optimizely on Optimizely. We actually redesigned our site and then tested it with Optimizely. And so here's what we did. This is a blog post about it. You can find it. Here we actually tested. This is the old page here on the left and the new page here on the right, the home page. Here's our old about page and our new about page. And I'm convinced this works so well because I got rid of my ugly face on the about page. And here are the results. This is the Optimizely results page. We tell you the number of unique visitors that are part of this experiment. We tell you then also the breakdown between the people who saw one version or the other, and we'd let you measure any number of conversion goals. It's not just did they click the button on the home page, but how did that change affect their entire experience across your site? So the first goal we measured was, do they use our editor? What this is telling you is that, okay, the redesign, 2,400 out of 8,600 people used our editor. That's great. And 2,000 out of 8,800 used the editor in the original site. Well, that's a bit worse. So the conversion rate difference was 23% for the original site, 28% for the new site. We tell you the improvement there is 23%. And then what's cool is we also give you a measure of statistical confidence as to whether that change is due to chance or because of the change we made. And we also show you cumulative conversion rate over time. And so that actually is a really great visual way, even if you don't understand statistics. The cumulative conversion rate over time is a great way for you to understand whether or not that change is due to chance. If those lines are zigzagging on top of each other, you know pretty likely that you haven't reached a homeostasis. And today, one thing that looks great, tomorrow might look worse. We let you track any number of goals. I'll show you a couple. Like we track the number of people who actually viewed our pricing page. Yes, question?
Actually, I was going to ask, how do you track goals on an About Us page? What would the goal be?
So the question is, how would you track goals on the About Us page? What would the goal be? In this case, we didn't necessarily just track goals on the page we tested. We track goals on our entire funnel. For us, our quantifiable success metric we care about is, do they use our editor? Do they start a free trial? Do they enter their credit card? The About page, in particular, is one of those pages that doesn't have a clear call to action. So you can't say, did people click on this page and then actually do some behavior? Fortunately for us at Optimizely, one of the things we try to do is on every page we have on our site, we have a clear call to action. In fact, right now, if you use Optimizely, you're going to be part of an experiment where you'll see the pricing page in places. If you haven't signed up, you'll see the pricing page and a link to that in pages even that you might not think are clear conversion pages. All right, so we have a goal here called visits pricing page. We also check, do they submit the success dialogue? Do they actually see a certain form? Do they contact sales? All of these goals we can easily measure with this one snippet of code across the entire site. Question, yes?
How do you segment different users coming
Yeah.
to the site?
So the question is, how do you segment different users coming to your site? And so there's two notions of segmentation. The first is what we call targeting, which is the idea of how do you define the people who actually see an experiment. The way you do that in Optimizely is we have this targeting dialog. And so the first targeting criteria is what's the URL that you want people to match. So in this case, maybe that if you have a category page, you want everyone in the category page, or if you want everyone on your entire site, if it's a top nav change, you can say a substring match on Atlassian.com. But the real power happens in this visitors conditions section. And so here you can actually define each subset of the people who see this experiment very, very concretely. So for example, come from these locations. Maybe if they come from Australia, they should see something. If they maybe come from San Francisco. And so if you wanted to, let's say, do a jobs promotion, you wanted to focus on those two locations, you can actually target them through geo-targeting through Optimizely to show not even just an A/B test, but a persistent message to them. You can also target based off of query parameters, browser, prefer a certain language as a default language setting. They have cookies, come from a certain URL. Are they in a particular segment? We have this notion of finding a segment, and can you then actually target them? What's great is, so that's our targeting. That's pre-test segmentation. How do you define who goes in an experiment? We have the exact same experience for after the experiment. Let's say you want to run an experiment like we did back on the Obama campaign. We showed different donation buttons to different people. And then you say, well, let me slice and dice the data in different ways. You notice, hey, people who never signed up, but actually people who never signed up and never donated, this button did the best. We have that in the results page as well. So right here on the results page, you can actually filter by different segments as well. Question? Yes, ma'am.
What's the typical duration of an experiment?
Yeah.
How do you define duration?
Yeah.
Is
The question is, what's the typical duration for an experiment? And there are two factors that go into that. One is how many visitors that come to your website, and the other is how dramatic is the change that you made. So the more visitors you have to your website, the sooner you get statistically significant results. The bigger the change you make, and part of the reason I say explore before you refine, is the bigger change you make, the sooner you get statistically significant results. I'll tell you, on average for most websites, if you make a subtle change, it'll take you months to get statistically significant results. For the average website, if you make a dramatic redesign change, like the change we made here, in about a month or maybe a couple of weeks, you can get statistically significant results. If you're a big company like IGN or like Starbucks or Crate & Barrel, customers of ours, they oftentimes can get statistically significant results in hours or even sometimes minutes. The challenge with that is you want to take into account the fact that you're running an experiment over a period of time. It's a controlled experiment, so some people see one version, other people see the same version or a different version. And you want to make it, take into account things like time of day effects. Possibly all the people who come to the IGN site at 1 a.m. are returning visitors, and so maybe that button doesn't work well. So one rule of thumb people recommend is wait at least 24 hours for an experiment, or maybe wait 7 full days to get the entire dynamic of different times of day. But again, the two big inputs are number of visitors to your site and the dramatic change or subtle change of the change. Yes, sir.
If I want to ask my designer to make a change, he
Yeah.
obviously has to have the FTP protocol. Your site doesn't do that as well?
So the question is, if you have a designer who wants to make a change, do they need access to your basic backend, be able to actually FTP the files in, for example, to where your site is? And one of the things one of the ways that Optimizely works is that we actually have this great ability for you to actually, in Optimizely itself, the changes that you make through this implementation are direct changes using JavaScript. So here you can see that the actual change that you're making, that file when it's on your site is actually going to load in parallel with the existing resources. So you put it on your website, and then underneath the hood, and there's probably some technical folks here, I'll give you a good example. This check awesomest products call to action. If you click edit code down below, we actually show you the JavaScript that runs in real time on your page. This is the actual JavaScript that Optimizely runs. And so all we store, you don't need FTP access to your site, all we store is the delta, the difference, the change you made in our editor, and that's what runs live when a visitor comes to your website. Okay, I'll pause again for questions. But So that's the Optimize the Results page, the Optimize the Editor. We have a bunch of advanced features around dynamic websites, content targeting, a great example. Interactive mode, it lets you actually go through the different carousels, and maybe you want to run an experiment on one of these different carousels. You can do that as well here. Change Awesomeness products across all of that. Glad to go in depth if there are specific questions, but enough about optimizing. Here's a handful of our happy customers, and our real secret to our success has not been our great sales team, but really very much like Atlassian, the delighted customers we have who sing our praises every day, and certainly hearing from a director of marketing at Starbucks recommending a product is much better than we could ever do ourselves. So with that, that's lesson 6, start today. So I'll recap the lessons. The first is to define quantifiable success metrics. Lesson 2, explore before you refine. Lesson 3, less is more, reduced choices. Lesson 4, words matter, focus on your call to action. Lesson 5, fail fast. And lesson 6, start today. Thank you very much. So we have plenty of time for questions, so I'd love to answer them. Yes?
So of that list there, what do you think, if you're going to optimize that list, what's the top?
So the question is, if you're going to optimize that list, the 6 lessons I just showed you, what's at the top? And fortunately, it is at the top. The number one thing I'd suggest, and it seems kind of simple, is just to define your quantifiable success metrics. Time and time again, I've seen people run an experiment. It's basically they're like on a rocket ship, and they're moving a bunch of levers, and they have no idea where it's going. Without doing that, you can't do the rest. You need to understand what you're trying to optimize. Yes, sir.
Do you have a solution for product for startups, early stage startups, like without too much traffic?
Yeah, the question is, do you have a solution for early stage startups without too much traffic? So there's a couple things I'd recommend. First of all, you can use Optimizely to actually power a couple different landing pages. Even if you don't test it, you can just use your visual interface. Oftentimes startups have a business owner who's responsible for acquisition. The engineers are working on the cool new social features behind the scenes. You can be the one that actually tries new designs on the website using Optimizely to power them. So you don't even need enough traffic for that. That's just, hey, power it through Optimizely. The second thing, if you do have some budget, I'd recommend you can actually go to services, Amazon Mechanical Turk, for example, and actually have people come to your website and pay for that traffic. The challenge is those people aren't necessarily going to be representative, but it's certainly a way for you to get some amount of traffic. And you'd be surprised. Oftentimes, if the change is big enough, you don't need tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of visitors. Over a period of a couple weeks, you might be able to actually get a statistically significant result. Way in the back with the hair.
Of your clients that use Optimizely that have a hard time getting tested results, see any patterns, like whether their major stumbling blocks are?
Yeah, the question is, of our customers who use Optimizely, of the folks who have challenges, what are the sort of major stumbling blocks? Is that right? So I would say probably one of the biggest stumbling, first of all, it's like the number one reason somebody's going to not use Optimize is if they never implement that snippet. So it's an organizational challenge. Can they get IT to actually agree to put this like one line of code on their site? Assuming you can get past that and you don't have a big IT department that's getting in your way, the next is that the changes you make are too subtle. You make a change, you're like, oh yeah, I'm so clever, like add a little exclamation mark, that'll be awesome. And I think the core of that problem, the reason why that problem happens is that I think people overvalue their current website way too much. They think their current website is pretty good because they're used to it. And so what I encourage you to do is actually go completely dramatically different. Even go to something like 99 Designs, have them redesign your website, and then test that versus your existing site. And it's either going to be way worse or way better. So that's a common mistake, is they'll do too subtle of a change because they assume their current website's good. And then I guess the last is they'll futz with the system too much. They'll be like, oh, hey, like this variation looks like it's working. It's not significant. Let's pause it. Let's change this. And like part of the whole system we've tried to build is a controlled experiment. We just set it and forget it. And sometimes you have to be patient before you get statistically significant results. Yes, sir.
So I'm guessing that you used Optimizely to also determine your pricing structure. It's incredibly random, but obviously probably what's most effective. Is that right? As a SaaS product, you have the
So the question is, obviously you must have used Optimizely to optimize your pricing structure. And I'm very sad to admit our pricing structure has not changed since we launched in October 2010. And so I know for a fact I can probably list 10 reasons why our pricing structure is not ideal. First of all, I think people generally say we're too cheap, but that's not a bad thing for you guys, it's a bad thing for us. And so I think we have an opportunity there. One of the challenges with optimizing pricing is that there is a psychological aspect of one person getting one price, another person getting another, that we didn't really want to take that risk. The other is there's an implementation challenge. It's not all front-end changes that will change a price. In fact, if it were, then you could hack it and like put whatever price you want. There is some back-end component. So we've been lucky enough to grow as fast as we have without changing pricing. So eventually we will, but not today. Back there, yes.
How do you cross data with something that's only known on the server, like whether or not a user is old or new?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you cross data? Is that your question? Segment. Yeah. How do you segment data based off of stuff you might have on your server? And there's a couple ways to do that. In the Optimizely editor, one of the things we have, and in fact, we have a whole API here. If you have server-side data that you can expose through JavaScript and actually just make an API call, one of the ways to do that is through a visitor segment. So you can actually just say Optimizely, add to segment some API identifier and say this person belongs. This is a 3-time purchaser or customer, or maybe somebody who I know is a particular segment I want to focus on. So that's one way to do it. And the other is you can actually tell Optimizely when to run and what not to run. So you can actually say, I want to bucket a visitor or put them in a particular variation if you're doing some server-side testing, which is very common. And probably the simplest of it all, if you do a server-side test and you actually make a dramatically new change, you can actually all you can use Optimizely for if you want is just a traffic cop. Create a variation, say redirect to a new page, and now you have a redirect variation, which is a perfectly valid way to test. Create a new variation, hard-code it, and do a redirect test. See whether the new variation works better than the original. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any tips on approaching new variants that are resource intensive? So you mentioned the reviews on
Yeah.
Barrel. So obviously copy is easy to change and design is relatively easy to change, but what about functionality?
The question is, do you have any approaches to testing things that may require engineering effort, functionality changes, as opposed to just cosmetic changes? One of the things I would recommend, it's a tough challenge, there's no magic bullet. One of the things that we found for the folks that really get a lot of value out of Optimizely, especially developers, is that they can actually do some skunkworks changes directly in the editor. You can actually write your own code. Here you can write JavaScript code, and that's the variation you create. So things like moving the order of modal dialogues or changing some visual experience, for example, pretty easy to do with Optimizely. You can use jQuery, any other library you want to transform those pages. At the end of the day, what we try to do is we try to be a layer on top of your website that enables you to measure and also change the things that help give you more value. And dramatically new website, we're not going to be able to build directly in the editor, but certainly if there are things you wish you could do and you can't, let us know and we can help. Yes?
Does it work with single-page websites? I noticed you've got like a hashtag up there.
Yeah.
You've got a single-page website.
And the question is, does it work with single-page websites? In fact, it does. And so Optimizely actually lets you target to any number of URLs, so you can actually have a experiment that runs on one URL across your entire site, and then you can target based off of maybe hashtag changes. Or if you want to run an experiment across multiple pages and have a consistent experience, we have an experiment type called a multi-page test, which is an experiment that allows you to consistently, for example, if we wanted to change the promotion for the Teams product, you can actually show that now across that same blue banner across every page, not just the first home page that you see. Yes?
Well, you've got an A/B test versus multivariate. What are the different scenarios of using A/B versus multivariate?
So the question is, what are the different scenarios for using A/B tests versus multivariate? And I have a very strong opinion on this. In the Obama campaign, we did a bunch of A/B tests. We did a bunch of multivariate tests. When I'm working with customers, a lot of people do multivariate tests. And almost always, it's much, much simpler, much easier to understand and implement to create a series of simpler A/B tests and incorporate the winner as you go along, as opposed to some massive multivariate test where you think of all the combinations and permutations that you might want to test. And there's two reasons for that. The history of this market, there's been incumbents, I'm not going to name any names, who have a very high cost to implementation. In order to actually implement an experiment, you have to put these things called M boxes all over your site. And in order to do that requires an engineer. And companies typically don't want an engineer who comes every week and helps you. Instead, they say, let's amortize all that, put it all together. Let's actually just have an engineer implement the entire biggest multivariate test we can at the beginning, maybe usually through professional services. And let's encourage our customers how great our product is when we do billions and billions of combinations of things. The downside, so that's one reason, it's purely implementation. With Optimizely, it doesn't matter. You run an A/B test, you don't have to change anything, no engineers required. The other is that if you actually create these experiments, as you go, you ask more questions than you get answers. That first experiment, you had this whole big plan of all these things you want to test. That first experiment, you might say, oh, screw all that other stuff. You don't know ahead of time what you want to test. And so what I recommend is say, take your site, create 4 variations. I bet you 2 of them will work better than what you currently have, 2 of them will work worse. Incorporate the winner, and then move on to the next A/B test. We included it as a feature, and it's actually really elegant. You can actually do it you can actually create now multiple sections, create a new section, and visually see all the permutations. But we do it because people ask, not because we think they should do it. Yes?
Can you run AA split tests?
Yeah, the question is, can you run AA split tests? And it's a really good question. Good anecdote is I was helping the guys at Wikipedia. What they do at the end of the year, they do this great fundraising campaign. Unfortunately, they can't use Optimizely because all they can use is open source tools. And they have so much traffic. They get these amazing traffic anomalies. They're like, wow, this is amazing. Like this picture of Jimmy at 1 p.m. was great because I think everyone came back from lunch. And then right at 2 p.m. it's statistically significantly it's swapped because people are they're digesting and this picture of this woman works great. And they were spending they were really passionate about it. And it turns out their entire methodology was broken. And so what I just told them is hey, maybe you should just try running an AA test, which is the idea of it's not Alcoholics Anonymous. It's running 2 variations in your tool that are exactly the same. And if the tool tells you that one variation is better than the other in a statistically significant way, there's a problem with your methodology. So with Optimizely, I encourage you to try that. You likely will not get that same issue. For them, the core issue, just to close the loop on Wikipedia, the core issue there was they were not uniquifying people over a long enough period. And so basically, one person who keeps coming back to the page who saw that one variation can have a huge adverse effect on affecting the conversion rate for that variation. Very back there, standing up.
Given the number of clients and experiments you run, are there any broad, say, industry-specific patterns you could describe? For example, white text on black background.
Yeah. The question is, given how many customers we have, are there any sort of industry-wide design patterns that we can share? And the lucky thing for us, there isn't. If there were, there'd be no reason to do A/B tests. And so, I'm not to say that facetiously. I mean, there are certain things that are there's bad design and there's good design, and sometimes the designer can just look at it and say, hey, that's not going to work. But and the bar is pretty low there, to be honest. Most websites suck. But the reality is, the real value you're going to get isn't from those sort of simple cosmetic design changes. They're from really understanding your user and then using A/B testing to test those hypotheses and improve over time as you get better. And the companies of our 3,500 companies, the ones that get millions and millions of dollars of value out of our product, are the ones that build this culture of testing, where they're incrementing everything they do. They test, and then they learn from that and improve as they go. Yes, sir?
Do you have a rule of thumb for about how much traffic you need in the site to support one A/B test?
Yeah. The question is, do you have a rule of thumb for the amount of traffic you need on your site to support one A/B test? And so, typically, obviously, A/B tests, it varies a lot based off of the amount of traffic you have. We have this rule of thumb here. It says it takes at least 25 conversions and 100 visitors per variation before we declare a winner. If you have if you don't have much traffic, one way to just get statistical significance sooner is not have as many variations. Try 1 or 2 things as opposed to 10 things.
And just to follow on to that, so it seems like this is geared toward a page, right? You create an A/B variation of the
Yeah.
page. Would you suggest only having one of those A/Bs running at a time, or what if I want to A/B test the landing page,
Yeah.
A/B test this page, and A/B test that page? Could I run them all simultaneously? Or
Yeah,
must I run
the
them
question is whether it's better to do one A/B test at a time or run them all simultaneously. I'd encourage you, and by default, the experience with Optimizely is that you have 2 experiments running on the same page. They'll just run on top of each other, and the same person will be put in both variations, both experiments. I encourage you to try that and do that. It's rare that you see these interaction effects. People like to come up with all these convoluted explanations that, that one test changed the sample here. For the most part, because you get a representative sample for each variation, it's fine to run multiple A/B tests on the same page. Yes?
Do you have any advice on not optimizing for the local maximum?
Yeah, the question is, do you have any advice for not optimizing for the local maximum? And I think it was the second lesson I shared was probably the most poignant on this. I'll just show this graph again. To avoid the local maximum, what the local maximum means is the idea that you're climbing a hill and you're going up the hill and you're like, oh, this is working, this is great. And then you get up to the top of the hill and you're like, wait a minute, this is not that high. There's a hill over there that's way higher. And part of the reason you do that is that you assume your current page is too good. You say, hey, it's pretty good, let's keep refining. You get to the point where you miss the best possible solution because you didn't consider dramatically different experiences. And I think there's a psychological component to that too, because once you start doing these refinements, you're like, oh, that was great, 10% lift, 5% lift, 10% lift. Then you're really reluctant to say, let's throw that all out and start with this new dramatic different layout because you've already worked so hard to refine that. So I think the keys to not getting to a local maximum are to be humble, admit that your current website probably sucks, and not to psychologically get too invested in the successes you had with A/B testing in the past. Yes?
Is anybody measuring the long-term effect of perceived instability or wishy-washiness of sites that are changing all the time? Every time I come, it's
Yeah.
a totally different design.
Yeah, the question is, has anyone measured the long-term effect on people thinking sites wishy-washy and changing all the time? No one that I know of has, and one of the things one of the reasons I'm not so worried about that is that with Optimizely, when you get put into a variation, you get cookied, and so you see the same variation every time you come back to the website. Sure, if you come from your phone and it's a different device or a different browser, you might see a different variation. But at the end of the day, actually, I think the best experiment in this is just think about all the websites you use today. Most likely, the websites you like the most are the ones that are A/B testing all the time: Amazon, Google, Facebook. And if those are the websites you're choosing to go to, you can go to any other, you can go, instead of Amazon.com, you can go to generic.com. And if you wanted a website that's A/B testing all the time, you'd have chosen it. And you already have. Yes, sir?
Have an estimate of what proportion of people are blocking their cookies and therefore
Yeah.
in that?
Yeah. The question is, do I have an estimate for what percentage of people are blocking their cookies, and therefore they might not get cookied? That's one of the hardest things to track, is if they're blocking their cookies, you can't test their cookies. And certainly, even harder would be, do they have JavaScript turned off? Because most JavaScript detection frameworks require JavaScript. And so I don't. I think the best studies that showed, that overall, the people who like to do these panel tests, they'll say it's like, in single digits percentage points. And that's a shame, but at the same time, if you think about it, the way A/B testing works, it just randomly takes the population of people and put them into different groups. And assuming that population is representative for the people who do have cookies turned off or JavaScript turned off, then the thing that worked well for the population with it on will probably work well for the thing with the population off. Aside from maybe it's like a tinfoil hat group that is very paranoid about stuff. But for the most part, I think you have a pretty good sample already. If you have 95% of your traffic with cookies on, you'll get a representative sample. Right here.
Is there support for mobile web interfaces?
Yeah. The question is there support for mobile web interfaces? And so I'll actually show you an example because you asked. So one of the things that we really focused on Optimizely is to be able to let you use it on any page that allows you to run JavaScript. And so one of the challenges, unfortunately, is that some sites that you go to, and in this case, Optimizely, some of the sites you go to that you're actually loading, they're loading on smaller form factors. There's a huge opportunity. Mobile web, for example, is a good opportunity for you to actually improve the conversion rate. You can actually run an A/B test. And so I'm actually going to load up CNN.com. You can do this today. CNN is a great customer of ours. You can't change their site, unfortunately, because you're not logged in as them. But when you load up their site in Optimizely, it looks like this. This is their website. Many of you might use CNN's mobile website. And what's cool in Optimizely, you go to the editor settings. You can actually load the mobile version of this page, which is really cool because now not only can you A/B test the mobile version of your page, but you don't need to buy 10 different devices. And watch this. You can actually see what the mobile version of the CNN.com looks like directly in your browser. We're spoofing the user agent underneath the hood to trick CNN into giving us the mobile version of their site. And you can do great things. You can say, hey, rearrange. Let's move this thing a little bit lower. The tagline is. You can do headline testing. They're already doing this today. So mobile web, got it. Yes, back there.
So the last you showed us where you redid your entire page.
Yeah.
Did you do something different than regular JavaScript when you printed it out? Rendering the whole page?
Yeah. So the question is for the test where we did this entire redesign where we have a very, very new design, did we do anything other than sort of the JavaScript? Did we use the visual interface or how do we do that basically? In this case, the way we did that was using something called a redirect test. Here we did a redirect to new page. We actually hard-coded and built that new design. And because we didn't want to put something live that might actually hurt performance, we hoped it would help. We actually did this redirect test where one version of the page went, I think it was something like new.optimizely.com or www.2.optimizely.com and then www.optimizely.com. I know we're at the top of the hour. I'll answer a couple more questions and also stick around if people have more questions. But yes?
Can I export the data that's in Optimizely in any format?
Yeah.
It seems like you'll have a lot of data over time.
The question is, can you export the data that's in Optimizely in any format? So we do make it really easy for you to export to CSV from the results page. And this will show you the data from the results of your experiment. And also, if you work with our team, we can get you as many raw logs as you need. And one last question over there. Yes?
So how did you, was it hard to solve like the browser support? Because let's say in one browser the website might render different.
Yeah.
I need some
Yeah.
to see it broken.
Yep. The question is it difficult for us to solve this problem of cross-browser support? In one version of the one browser, it might render differently than the other. And the truth is it's a hard problem to solve. And so things like in Optimizely, if you make text changes, for example, some browsers have different default text height issues. And if you resize and move things around, it doesn't look quite right. And so we try and make it as robust as possible. We use jQuery for most all the changes we make, which helps. And for the cases where it doesn't, we have this feature called cross-browser testing, where you can actually take the actual variation that you create in Optimizely and then see it in all the different browser combinations that you might imagine. So on mobile devices, on PC, on Mac, on Windows, on Safari, on IE. And so it doesn't necessarily prove it will be right, but at least you can test it and make sure it looks good. All right, with that, thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate your time.